I'm Leslie Feinzaig. I'm the founder and general partner at Graham& Walker. We are a VC fund dedicated to investing in Silicon Valley's biggest blind spots. And we do these conversations about once a month where I get to invite a fellow VC, sometimes a founder, and pick their brain. And mostly it's for my own purposes so that I can learn from cool people. But then it also turns out to be really, really interesting conversations for founders. So thank you so much for joining us. Today we are chatting with my new friend, Josh Felser. I think that we met online. I think we met on LinkedIn. How did we meet?
We did. We
Yeah.
did. It's
Um,
when you were doing I think it started with your
with the
political
pledge.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, when I accidentally blew up my life. That was a story for another day. So please welcome Josh Felser. Josh is a serial entrepreneur and investor with a deep track record, both in general tech and more recently focusing on climate tech. So we're going to talk a little bit about both. Co-founder, managing partner at Climactic. Before Climactic, you co-founded Freestyle Capital, where you invested in unicorns like Airtable, Patreon, BetterUp, Intercom, and you actually founded and sold a couple of companies yourself in like the earlier days, not to date ourselves, but earlier days of the web. And so you know the journey inside and out. And on top of that, a longtime environmental advocate, mental health champion, and I did not know this, but you're also a DJ. Is that something like you're doing it now or just like an old school, like
No, I do
different
it
times things?
now. I do it now. I do
So
it
where
now.
can people find you as a DJ? I mean, that's what we all want to know.
Um, well, it's you can see what I'm liking on SoundCloud and and you can see me at Burning Man and you can see me hopefully at the next party that we throw. I'm looking at Haley, our chief of staff.
All right, so Josh and Haley are going to put an invite to their next party in the chat room. I think I'm just kidding. All right, well, welcome, Josh. Thank you so much for doing this with me. And you are in San Francisco. Is that right?
I actually live at Stinson Beach,
Okay.
which is about 40 minutes north of San Francisco.
Okay. So, why don't we start with, I mean, I kind of read a few bullet points about you, but why don't you tell us your story kind of um, first person? Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Wow. Well, you dated us already, so that would take a long time. So I'm
I
gonna
mean, I
do.
dated you. I didn't date myself. But like, I'm a
Thank
spring
you.
chicken. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll start like God, man. My first job was as a currency trader, and then I worked in Hollywood for Fox when it was cool, back in like the 90s. And I guess, long circuitous route. I got I was living in Boulder and I was working for a big phone company and I was in charge of all the product and business development on their big TV trial, interactive TV trial, which was the thing back in the 90s. And then I met with this really low level engineer at Electronic Arts. I was working with them to bring like a video game service to television. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to tell my senior management to fight doing a deal with you. I like you, but I'm going to fight. I'm going to tell them, and
Cool.
I'm going to win, and you're not going to get what you want from EA. And he was like a peon at EA, but like I said, why? And he told me about this thing called the internet, and he started explaining it to me. And this is like in '96, and I was like, holy shit! Like this is what I should be doing, not this interactive TV bullshit. I should leave Boulder. I should move to San Francisco and become a founder. And that's what I did. And I thanks to him, like if I hadn't listened to him, it might have been too late. But I moved to San Francisco and I founded an internet music company, the first with my partner and at the time. And we were kind of a rocket ship, and it was one of those like stories where we were so early, we were number one, and we just kept building, and then we sold it in '99. But I want to know who that guy is.
Yeah.
I don't know his name. I want to thank him. I don't know how to find him, but he really turned my life around. Like he sent me in the right direction.
I
And
wonder what he's doing now.
I don't know how to even find him. I don't know his name. I mean, I would maybe he's listening and he'll appear, but I don't. I mean, he through him. I was lucky to actually be one of those people trying to figure out how to make sense of this new technology, and we focused on music back
So
then.
then you were founding and operating companies for a long time, and then you kind of
Yeah.
switched sides and went into venture capital. So tell us about that transition.
Well, like so the most interesting part of that story, I think, is not like yes, I started two companies. One is probably they both had good exits. One is on your smart TV. It's called Crackle. And but while I was doing Crackle, I had this is like the body doesn't lie about stress. It was
Yeah.
so stressful. We pivoted, we struggled, we fought, we failed, we won. We just it was a really hard journey, and the stress gave me sleep apnea. And so it's kind of started my whole mental health journey. It was unusual because sleep apnea usually is caused by other things, but in my case, Stanford misdiagnosed me, but UCSF got it right, and they said you're totally stressed out. You're not doing anything for your mental health, and your body is telling you this. And so
Wow.
we sold we just like right when I learned all this, we were about to sell the company, so it was great timing. And I started getting my mental health together, and I stopped, my stress level went down, and my sleep apnea disappeared. So the body doesn't lie, and but after that happened, I'm like, I'm going to leave the stress to all of you, and you founders can have the glory and the stress, and I'll do what I think is the next best thing, which is to invest in them, support them, and be as close to it as I can get, but have the ease of a whole portfolio of companies and not just one that's like on my back that I'm totally responsible for. And that's what I've kind of been doing ever since. And so I founded Freestyle back then with the same guy I founded the two companies with, and and then COVID hit, and I took 5 months off to run a task force for the governor of California to basically source private companies and solutions to many of the challenges we were facing. And while I was doing that, I kind of got religion around like applying the private sector to solve these big beefy problems. And I'd already started a nonprofit focused on climate. And then at this that was bubbling, and then my longtime friend Raj was thinking of jumping from Lyft, where he was the chief strategy officer. And I'd run it. My partnership at Freestyle had kind of run its course. We'd been together. Dave and I'd worked together for 20 years, and a new challenge made sense. All that super things happened, and I started Climactic with Raj, and we've been doing that ever since. So we started it with our own money for a while, and then like really in earnest in 20 late 22.
Are you, so tell us about Climactic, before
Yeah.
we kind of move on and keep talking about you. Like, what are you guys investing in? What stage? What kind of companies? What are you looking for?
Yeah, we're mostly a seed stage fund. We invest in Series A and pre-seed. Mostly we're a seed stage fund. We write $1 to $3 million checks, and usually it's focused on the enterprise. Like usually we're focused on B2B companies that are trying to help the massive companies decarbonize. And mostly we do that by investing in AI and automation. That's kind of our core focus. When you do that, when you AI and automation are mostly focused on creating greater efficiency and hopefully using cleaner energy. And that's kind of our primary focus. Energy ends up being a massive bucket for us because that's where we see the greatest impact.
But so, let me try to understand that better because like AI itself is super energy inefficient or like sucks up a lot of power. So how do you or is it getting better? Like tell me, educate me a little bit more.
I mean, both are true.
Okay.
Yes, like it's today it sucks up a lot of power.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. So we're not investing in like the general foundational models that suck up all the power. We're using AI in other ways. So, like, we invested in a company that's using AI to help the biggest enterprises around the world figure out the most efficient path to net zero, right? So that's a great example. AI is also being used to create efficiency in a building and a factory, right? How do you regulate temperature? How do you prevent downtime, so there are many applications of AI that aren't kind of the power sucking, use cases that we hear about the most. We're also investing in companies that help big data centers actually use energy more efficiently and make better use of clean energy. So
Yeah.
all those things are true. There's no stopping AI. It's not. So we're realists, and so we're using it in the most efficient ways that we can.
So, and maybe thinking about the climate investing category more broadly, and honestly, this is like a little bit of a trick question too, because it doesn't just apply to climate, it applies
Yeah.
to a whole bunch of categories where you're solving big societal problems um, through a venture-backed startup model. So do you consider climate to be an impact investing category? And like, how do you kind of think about I feel like impact investing has gotten a little bit of a bad rap, like you're kind of sacrificing bottom line profits for like a different type of bottom line. Like, how do you kind of think about that in climate and maybe in the sort of solving giant societal problems investing space?
I mean, there are impact funds that raise money from LPs that are comfortable with impact metrics and usually longer time frames, right? And those funds need to exist, and the world is better off for it. Um, that's not us, right? We really are. We do achieve impact, but our LPs and we believe that financial success is how we scale impact, right? So we're looking to invest in companies that financial success help enterprises actually do things better, more efficiently, like and at the same time, we're focused on technologies that have impact, positive impact. Like one of our partners is Paul Hawken, and for years he would talk about regenerative agriculture and he has a lot of supporters, but at some point he realized that he needed to stop saying that and just say better farming, right? Regenerative agriculture is better farming. So he started saying better farming, and sure enough, there was no more resistance from like a political bias, right? It then everybody, all farmers want to do better farming. And so that's kind of how what our shift, that's kind of our shift over the last 3 or 4 years has been really where we're focused on better business, but the kinds of better business that lead to impact, right? So it's if we can help companies, like you look around your room and there are all these products you see in your room, if we can help companies create those products with fewer resources, that's positive impact, right? But it's just better business too. So that's kind of how we straddle the fence between like financial performance and impact. We don't do anything that doesn't have positive impact, and we don't do anything that doesn't have financial reward. Both have to exist for us.
I love that story and I kind of want to like borrow it.
It's
Going
yours.
forward, it's so good because you're right. Like, in these big impact spaces, sometimes the language gets in the way of the thing, right? Like, and you have to decide, are you here to proselytize or are you here to just solve a problem, right? Like, which is more important, what
Right.
you do or how you talk about it?
Right.
I really, really like that. I'm borrowing it. Tell your partner. Um,
Well, one other thing just in that same language is so important
yeah.
and especially in the world of climate. And so like there was you know, it came up in a Paul and I were having a conversation with a farm. We took these 10 farmers out to dinner and we were talking about biodiversity and half the farmers are Republican and they were like biodiversity on our property, that's meaning, I don't know what that even means. All I know is I want a really healthy forest around me so I can fish and hunt. And I'm like, well, we all want the same thing. Like, you're not going to overfish and overhunt because you want to create, a long-lasting, like really healthy environment, ecosystem. And the left will talk about, preserving forests forever. They don't. So each side is wants something similar. And so I heard that. I'm like, great. You want to preserve forests and you want to do it so you can hunt and fish for the rest of your lifetime and beyond. Great. That's great.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm going to do. I mean, I fish, but I don't hunt. And so I think we just need to cross these language barriers and I think we'll find a lot more in common,
Yeah.
than we don't.
Ugh, that gives me hope. It's a whole other conversation. Um, but yes. Yeah. What do you think are what are the like exciting opportunities in climate today?
Yeah. Let's see. Uh, a lot of what we focus on again is around is using software, at least as a smart software as kind of a catalyst to create efficiency in everything we do. So we invested in a company called Grit, and what Grit does is they're both a mix of smart software and robotics, and they dramatically accelerate and cut the costs of a utility scale solar installation. And the robot is like on these big treads, and it goes into the warehouse and it grabs like a big solar cell, and it knows where to take it, and it plops it down on the frame, and then a human screws in the solar cells. That simple, it's a little more complicated than it sounds, but that simple exercise, it cuts costs by 60% and really speeds up the construction of this utility scale solar farm. We are excited about any solution that looks at if you're building like a virtual power plant, which really means you have like some storage on site and you've got solar and you're also buying energy from maybe battery farms that are off site, and to manage all that like in the most efficient way possible to focus on getting as much clean energy as you can. The software that does that is really exciting to us. So, and there are lots of different pieces of that. We love marketplaces too. What's that, Leslie?
That's interesting because I feel like in the broader VC space, like marketplace has become almost like a dirty word. Like it's like
Yeah.
done kind of all the, you know, three or 180 from the days where like everybody wanted to be like
Yeah.
Uber, Airbnb, or like Etsy, right? And now it's like, oh, there's all
Well,
this.
yeah, Leslie, in our world, a marketplace, especially if it's a marketplace that is
So look in the comments, Jen says, we love marketplaces. I haven't heard that. Yeah.
well,
I'm sorry. I mean,
I'm
I
gonna
haven't heard
explain.
that in
Yeah,
years too.
yeah.
Come on, Josh, like give it to us.
Well, consumer marketplaces are a little different, but
Yeah.
enterprise marketplaces are, especially if you're creating the marketplace kind of at the beginning of the workflow. So if you look at, we've looked hard at the clean energy project marketplace and companies that are involved in the beginning when there's like an RFP from like a landowner or a Walmart, and they're putting it out to bid from developers, and if you can create a marketplace that's the biggest and best in that area, you kind of own both sides at the beginning, and then you can use that to expand into other products that keep moving you up the workflow because you actually have both sides at the beginning of the project. That is an exciting kind of marketplace because there are financing needs and there are O&M needs. Like someone has to provide the maintenance on all the solar fields and the wind farms, and so I think you start being able to push into other recurring revenue kinds of businesses that supplement the transaction revenue of the marketplace. So when those opportunities exist, we get really excited. I think it would be if we saw a marketplace that had no potential beyond just the first transaction, that would be less exciting to us.
Almost like the marketplace as like a customer acquisition vehicle.
Totally.
And then there's like this other value proposition that makes it sticky.
Yes, totally.
So, I mean, when you're looking at these companies, like everything that you're describing, I'm very curious about who are the founders that you are looking at and that you're particularly interested in because um these seem like spaces that you have to be experienced in or kind of an insider to, like in order to. So you know, and also at the same time, it sounds like distribution as a competitive advantage is quite important.
Mhm.
So how are you balancing just sort of like looking for amazing founders versus like well-connected ones? Like what,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, we have our like, whole checklist. But the main, I mean, command of the market is really vital. Like that's one of the first things we look for. But it's not like, you can't have the command of the market unless you have like really rooted in like we look for enterprise savvy founders. Whether that's the probably the like command of the market is really understanding the enterprise sales and marketing process and how enterprises use products. And so we're more likely to invest in a founder that has those skills and another founder that has the expertise kind of in that industry. We err on more of the kind of like, hey, you know how to build an enterprise company, and you're either going to hire the expertise in that industry. But we don't typically like if we were looking at like a deep tech company, then it's more important to have that industry expertise. But we tend to look for less deep tech. We're not really as deep tech focused. We 20% of our fund is reserved for deep tech, but we're looking at it more of our typical kinds of companies. We want someone that knows how to build an enterprise company. That's kind of the most critical for us. And then we look at, well, do they understand the market? They need to understand the market too. But usually founders that get to we're more likely when a founder gets to the seed stage and they're raising their round, they for us to be excited, they have to have the enterprise experience. And if they've gotten to the seed stage, they typically have picked up the industry experience.
Um, what is, give me a definition of deep tech as you think about it, just so we're all kind of speaking the same language.
Yeah. So deep tech for us has science risk.
Yeah,
That's the main difference.
yeah.
It has science risk. And we've invested in there are two amazing founders. They happen to be identical twins.
Oh no, that's awesome.
Um, and I think they're identical. I think
Are they
they're
co-founders?
yeah, they're co-founders,
Oh, that's
and they founded a company that basically takes
cool.
CO2 in a factory and on-site uses enzymes to convert that into carbon negative clothing, digital
This is
twin.
like such an unlock. Have you ever
Yeah,
asked yourself, like, I wish I could clone myself? Like, they
yeah,
literally,
yeah,
that is awesome.
right.
It's really cool.
And one is more of a scientist, one is more of a kind of product salesperson, and they both worked in I think their uncle ran BB, the big clothing company or retailer.
Oh,
Uh, yeah. And so there are two female founders that have done an amazing job in a really hard space. And if they pull it off, they will totally change the industry because, carbon negative clothing that's priced at the same price or very similar to regular rayon would be a
unlock.
huge deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. So as you look, and how many investments have you made or approximately? Like, how big is the portfolio these days?
Yeah. Now the company is called Ruby Labs.
Ruby Labs.
Yeah. One more time, Leslie.
How many investments have you made out of Climactic?
I think we're up to we made a bunch. We made nine with our own capital that we rolled into the fund, and then I think we're at because we haven't announced a couple. We're at nine with the core fund. So we're about 40% invested in fund
Okay.
one.
So, 18 companies, and it's all you've been investing for 4 or 5 years out of
Yeah.
Climactic. And in those 4 or 5 years, I went through this too. We started investing fund one in 2021. We've gone through like massive, venture capital highs
Yeah.
to screeching halt in funding. Um, and then kind of a stop start or maybe a bifurcation of funding into like AI and not AI.
Right.
or AI and everything else. So what is the funding environment like in climate? And has it changed more recently with like the kind of turning of the tides sort of on a federal level?
Um, it certainly hasn't improved,
Yeah, okay.
right? So,
No, sorry, it's
I
not fun.
mean,
That was a
you know,
nervous laugh.
yeah, it is more challenging. Like for founders, for funds, I mean, honestly, it's like there's no hiding. Everybody talks about, oh, well, it's great. We're energy dominance is the new buzzword, and you know, it's what we have to focus on. So we instead of like, the energy transition or yes, we use the same buzzwords now that cross the aisle, which is really on energy abundance, energy dominance, cheap energy. But it is harder. Like it's there's no doubt about it. Like we had amazing air cover from Washington and the way that played out is not, I mean, the IRA is an amazing, I've never seen a regulation like a bill that has had more of a profound kickstart, been a more profound Kickstarter for business in my
The Inflation
estimation,
Reduction Act?
or investing life. What's that?
You're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act?
Yes, it is. It has changed the industry in such a positive way. Like not doesn't it doesn't create businesses that shouldn't exist. What it does is it allows them to achieve scale faster because of the subsidies. It's been amazing. So that still exists for now, but loans are starting to be canceled by the government. And so if depending on how Congress what they decide to do about the IRA, which is right now, I'm in the thick of it too with a lot of other folks. It's swirling in Congress about what they're going to keep, what they're going to eject. Um, that will have a profound, if they remove, let's say they rejected everything in the IRA, that would have an impact on our industry, a negative impact. And because we do, one, the fossil fuel industry has billions of dollars of subsidies that it depends on for its business, right? So if you somehow said, hey, we're just going to penalize renewables and we're going to say no more subsidies for you, well, they're immediately at a disadvantage because the fossil fuel industry has billions of dollars of subsidies. Explicit subsidies, not the implicit, there's more implicit stuff around health but just the explicit subsidies. So at least keep the playing field even, right? Subsidize both. Great. Um, so it's an unknown right now. So during that period of uncertainty, I think uncertainty is the buzzword that a lot of us are feeling, both founders and investors right now. In that uncertainty, it's another risky box to check off. And that makes it like funding rounds are taking longer to come together. Uh, uh, Funds are taking a little longer to raise their funds. And the impact is real. I think it's really it's sad like that we can't like that impact funds are going to be impacted by this, but it's a reality that funds like ours and Leslie, I think yours, we really need to focus on both like speaking the language that does cross the aisle and approaches that are fundable. And so,
Oh,
we've been like as a longtime investor, we've been investing in smart software for years, like well before Climactic. That's a lot of what we invest in. And we're just doing even more of that and calling it AI,
yeah,
with Climactic.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think by the nature of the overlap of sort of, I run a venture capital fund and I care about, people, like
Yeah,
let's call it equality of opportunity. And I think that there's a lot of folks on one side of that rivet that are uncomfortable with making a lot of money, like just
yeah,
plain as right, like
right.
and there's a founder in our community. I was doing a fireside with her a few years ago. So she makes her company created equipment to make plant-based chicken nuggets at scale. So these are not the ones that you buy in the grocery store. These are the ones that sell directly to like schools and like
Yeah.
um prison, very like just sort of um massive cafeterias.
Mm,
And she's a hippie, right? So she's like incredibly uncomfortable with the idea that she's going to be very, very wealthy because this company is doing very, very
right,
well.
right.
And she said something that stuck with me, which was, when you live in a capitalist society, the way that you change the world is by changing the flow of capital. And so I think about that a lot, and the kind of like that, if I want to change the world, I'm going to change the flow of capital. And like, I think about changing who it goes to. I think about changing what it gets spent on.
Right.
But it's really just about like changing the incentives, and then, you change the incentives, that changes the system. Um, and I don't think that like in the world of venture capital, you can do it any other way than by making someone a hell of a lot of money
Hmm.
and like unapologetically.
Yeah, what they do with the money is their business, right? It's
Yeah.
you can change your own personal flow of capital.
Yeah.
That's what we can we have the ability to control that, you
Yeah.
know. But we have to be careful. Like I really try hard not to I don't know if it's shame. Like shame doesn't get you anywhere. Like you shame other people, they're just gonna ignore you.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get what you want. Like shame doesn't
Or like
work.
give people purity tests, or it's just, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You have to like set an example for what
Yeah.
you're going to do and how you control your own life, and people can be inspired by that. And I'm not as I think about this a lot, but I don't. My answer to that is like if I could magically wave, if I could wave a magic wand now, and I could split myself into two people, I would try and run. I would look at I would find a nonprofit that I could really believe in, and I would spend half my time working to modernize and accelerate that nonprofit at
Mm.
the same time as I was doing like Climactic. If I could magically do that, I would do it
Yeah.
because I think
Maybe
that
if you had a twin,
yes, if I could clone
if
or
you
if I
could clone
could,
yourself.
but it doesn't answer your question. I don't have the answer to, to reimagining the flow of capital. It's an interesting thing to ponder, other than like each of us making that decision for ourselves.
Yeah.
And if enough of us do it, then that has the change that creates the change
But
that
you
on the
can't
macro
change
scale.
the flow of capital just by sort of with like virtue signaling. Like I think that you have
No.
to deliver a better product. Like that,
Yes. Yes.
in this founder's example is like it just has to be like a better for you, cheaper, easily available chicken nugget.
Totally.
Period. Like a
Yeah.
better chicken nugget.
Yeah.
That also happens to have a lower carbon footprint. Or New York is it's just like better software for a better business, or like better farming. Like that is the kind of the key here is like you don't change the flow of capital by forcing people to eat more broccoli. I mean,
Right. Right. I agree.
taking back to dinner last night with my kids, so I'm gonna just move on before I start going totally in a different direction.
Maybe
Okay,
like
so
better one thing I wanted to say that I was back to this earlier part of our conversation that Paul put in my head because I listened to him quite a bit. I Paul Hawken, by the way, again, is a six-time best-selling author. He's an entrepreneur and an activist and amazing. He's the kind of climate and food and ag advisor to Walmart and Nestle. So he really has a great perspective. And he said he convinced me that maybe our top metric before we get to any other metrics when we look at a company is, does this company make life on Earth better?
hmm,
It's so simple.
so easy.
And first answer that. And
Yeah,
then like, yes, it has to make money and other things, but does it make life on Earth better?
yeah.
I think that's a great
And do you
yeah,
think about that like in the kind of entry point in your pipeline, or the sort of final decision-making moment?
entry.
Entry.
Because if I can't answer that, yes, I shouldn't be talking to
Then
them.
you should not be spending time with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. We like I do the so we have a different version of that question that we ask before the investment gets in, kind of in the diligence process, which is what does the world look like when this company is massively successful?
Yes.
Um, because sometimes I mean, I find that like what would happen if Facebook fell on my lap today, right? Like, could I think about, the sort of negative externalities and like maybe that's a bad example, but that's kind of the way I think about it. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, we could make a lot of money, but like, what are the externalities of a model like this one being massively successful? And I find that it's a really helpful exercise, along with like will my LPs be proud to be investors in this company and this founder? Like, are they going to show up in the, cover of the Wall Street Journal and
Mhm.
like embarrass the bejesus out of like everyone involved?
Right. Right. So far, we've been,
Ups and
I
downs.
haven't, I love seeing some of the chat
Yeah.
pop up on the window, in my, like below my screen. I, what's hard in the world of climate, one of the challenges in the world of climate and software is that most companies, to really achieve scale, they end up needing to service non-climate use cases.
Yeah.
Um, and we're okay with that. Like, for example, like this company I mentioned that is they're kind of the best at using AI to create the most efficient path to net zero for a big company. They'll probably have to take on all capital allocation because the companies aren't going to want to have one company for net zero and one company for all their other capital allocation needs. And when they do the other analysis, it's just neutral. It's not, if they were doing it to like, there's probably some really negative use case I could think of, but typically it's neutral. And we just want to make sure that the net zero piece is a huge part of the business. And if 5 years from now they've achieved scale by doing both, that's totally fine.
Yeah. May it be so.
Yeah.
So I would love to kind of be a fly on the wall when you are talking to your portfolio founders today about all of the uncertainty, like
Mm.
all of these things that are happening. Like, what are you? So first is like, what are you paying attention to? And second is like, how are you talking to your founders about it?
Yeah. Well, the tactical one is easier, like the tactical conversations we're having, which is preserve capital, like
Mhm.
um, raise more than you think you'll need. Like, what happens if we just went through this with a company we're leading an investment in. Like, what if your revenue is 50% less and just show me a plan that has you lasting for 24 months without the need for capital with revenue of 50%, right? And make sure you raise that amount, right? Or if we've already invested, make sure that you you're not accelerating kind of your expenses ahead of your revenue so that you get into this challenge of needing to raise capital, shorter than 18 to 24 months. So that's we have these tactical conversations. We're having them now. Not all of our companies are, impacted. Most of them are either they've maneuvered to be less impacted by, government decisions. But the ones that are, we have that direct conversation early. And again, our role, we're advisors. Like we can't, even if we could enforce things, we wouldn't because then we're running the company. So we advise but usually that advice is taken and on these areas. And we end up, prepared for the worst, hoping for the best, but we're prepared. On the emotional side is much harder because founders have kind of the hardest jobs in our world, and climate founders have the added like emotional challenge of kind of this existential confrontation that occurs every single day as they are reading about the planet being impacted, and they know more than the typical person about what's happening to our planet. So they have this added stressor, and now you have uncertainty as a third like stressor, and it's really hard to deal with. And so we just like encourage them to openly share all of their worst nightmares, their fears, their like let's get it all out on the table. And we do the same thing. And so we're not having there aren't like secret conversations happening. We're all sharing openly about the challenges of being where we are right now. Um, thanks, Tanya.
That's funny,
But
Tanya.
I can say this now after all these years, like we're totally therapists to our founders.
Yeah.
We're not, it's just the way it,
Yeah.
I'm learning about myself all the time. I've also like done all this. Raj and I have been heavy into personal growth for a long time, both in therapy and Hoffman and Groundbreakers. And some of you know these things, and we prioritize it. Like, and we prioritize it for our founders. Like we're with our second fund, we're going to do some things we were able to do at Freestyle, which is like actually pay for our founders to pursue their own personal growth. And so, it's I don't say that lightly because we're not actually therapists, but most of our founders are, we wish they were all in therapy, and actually whenever it comes up, we advocate for the company to pay for their therapy. It's a fucked up world where the coach is paid for, but the therapy isn't,
No, this is not, yeah.
and there like therapy maybe is more important than coaching. And so we advocate for the company to pay for it the same way they would for coaching, whatever's not covered by your insurance. And then we jump in. I think you were to interview founders about us, like they would say, yeah, like we are help there. We are a um, uh, you have to be careful because there's a power dynamic, but we talk about that too. And because we share our feelings and emotions, the founders feel like it's a safe place for them to share their feelings and emotions. And so we have really great conversations about the softer side of being a founder.
I mean, I definitely think that you're getting some lovely comments here in the chat. I definitely think that having experienced building a company, especially having a rough go of it in your second one, right? Like, um, you know, there's an empathy that you bring to the sort of founder conversation that I don't think is shared across the industry, particularly with like the professionalizing of VC, right? Like, um, and I don't know, I think that there's also like an age, I mean,
Hmm. There we
like,
go.
yeah, no, I'm serious, but for me as well, like I'm in my 40s and like
Yeah.
I'm chronically like stretched thin and have way too many things. I mean, that was I had therapy before this today, and like literally the entire conversation was like, what can I drop? Like everything is about to fall. And I think that like um, you know, going through several at bats in your career and like seeing how reputations build or don't
Right.
over time, right? Like it's sort of like I think founders really, really appreciate that. That like you can say like, hey, I've seen the ugly and like I'm not scared of it. I've like lived the ugly and like you can talk to me about it. And
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I've seen it in myself. Like it's
yeah,
not like
like
I went through my version of it. The thing that one of the misconceptions that that a lot of people in the industry have is the idea that if um if you don't shine a light on like the emotional side, that it doesn't exist.
yeah.
Right? It's seeping out in everything you're doing. Like you're shining a light on it, that's the only way to move through it. Without the light, it's just going to keep coming up. Your lens is going to be colored by by those unreleased like feelings and emotions, and so we shine a light on it, like and we're very direct about it. And but not direct in an asshole way, direct in a compassionate way, and although sometimes I'm sure we're perceived as direct in an asshole way, but we're really trying to be like compassionate. And sometimes we're triggered and we have to apologize for things that we might say. Like we're human. But I really think shining a light on it is the way to move through whatever it is that's making decisions either harder um, or the last thing we want our founders to do is to operate out of fear. Right? So let's just talk about it. Let's both share that we're scared, and then it's out there, and it's amazing how that helps both sides move through it. And then you're not making a decision based on fear anymore.
I was just like thinking that not only does the industry sort of like if we don't talk about it, it's not there, but also I feel like for whatever reason, we built in like incentive systems that push founders to pretend that they're crushing it all the time. That like,
Yeah,
so
right.
not only like are we stigmatizing the hard part, right? But
Yeah,
also everybody at all times is pretending that they have all of their shit figured out and like and that they are crushing whatever founder mode thing is like the hot thing that you're supposed to be crushing today. And the reality underneath that is like way, it's just like way messier, way harder. And if you can't even like bring that to the table, then how are you
Right.
supposed to get over it?
Right.
I feel like I'm really glad we had this conversation. And I don't like I didn't know you that well, but um I feel like this is the type of VC that I can get behind. Like I frequently look at the industry
Thank you.
and we are recording this, and so I probably shouldn't say it, but like I frequently look at this industry. Like I've been a VC for 4 years. I was a founder and operator long before that. I'm a very reluctant VC because I feel like there's a lot of really bad behavior.
Mm.
And I have this like existential fear sometimes, Josh, that like, and this is just being super honest with you, like I see a lot of successful VCs and I'm like, if that is what it takes, I don't have it in me.
Right.
Like I really do. But then I have a conversation like this and I'm like, okay, if that is what it takes, maybe I can do it. So thank
Right.
you for giving me that today.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. Um, and I
Okay.
think that there's a whole, we had a lot of time today. We go through all this, but there's this whole, was in a board meeting the other day, and the founder, she said, she made a comment about, we're working. One of the reasons that she wanted us to invest is that my background, like my functional kind of skill, is really around product and business development around product. And she made a statement to the board. She said, "Well, I don't know if I can learn product." And I looked at her. I said, that sounds like a limiting belief. Like, and then we got into a whole conversation about limiting beliefs and what that means. And she was like, this is exactly why you're on my board, because, no one else is, the other board members, they all bring something different, but that conversation about limiting beliefs, which we then had offline too, I know was really helpful to both of us, but to her, to kind of, somebody told her that when she was younger, that she couldn't do something, and it translated in that moment to her believing she could not like actually learn how to be a product driven CEO, and so I'm like, let's find you an amazing advisor who can help explain that to you and show you that, and like help you coach you into being an amazing product driven CEO. And that's the road we went in versus like trying to hire another like really senior person to take that on, for her.
Yeah. Um, I also I have so many stories around the like the thing someone told you once
Yeah.
and then you live with it forever and then you're like, oh wait, I'm actually really good at this thing that for 10 years I thought I was bad at because some partner told me that I should never do business development. This is like that was my version of that.
Totally.
Um,
We all have it.
what's yours?
God, there's so many. Mine kind of for years revolved around crying.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm
For
a good crier. That's not
Oh my
my.
God, I'm such a crybaby. I'm really good at it now. But
Are
for
you?
years, yeah, I was told crying is weakness, and you have to be strong. And I remember exactly the moment that my grandfather was like, "You're the man of the house. You have to take care of everyone." I was 15, everyone, and it's your job. You got to be strong. And it took me like, years before I could learn that actually by crying, that is a strength. Like I'm showing that it's okay to cry. Like it's actually purifying to cry. It's moving through your emotions. So now I cry all the time. Sometimes in situations where the other person who is not comfortable crying is like what's going on, but that's okay. So that's a big change for me. Um, and when I can learn how to cry,
That's funny,
I
man.
see that. I see that. It changed a lot for me.
I
Being
love that.
vulnerable like changed a lot
Yeah,
for me.
I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. And
Yeah.
it does a
Like
lot, I've been thinking a lot about the sort of like what that message does to little boys. because you're not the only one who got that, right?
Well, it's like it's that, and then we're also so many of us are taught that negative emotions are bad.
Yeah.
And so we aren't comfortable with negative emotions, and we're really not comfortable if someone else is having a negative emotion in front of us. And
Yeah.
so that was a big, along with crying and being comfortable with negative emotions, like that changed my relationships with everyone, like my kids, my wife, my founders. If they get negative in a conversation, I'm like, great, like tell me more. Like what's underneath that? We'll have a
Yeah.
conversation about that because like it's again, it's there.
Yeah.
Like shine a light on it, it brings it to the surface, and then we can move through it and then make better decisions.
I'm going to start taking questions from the audience. So if anybody wants to ask Josh questions, just put them in the chat. And I'm going to start with one that's actually just a great segue from this conversation, which is, so if you're talking about teaching your founders to navigate their feelings, or at least like encouraging them to navigate their feelings. Do you also encourage them or like help in any way for them to create company cultures that do that? Like, is it sort of like propagating beyond the founder and
Yeah.
into how they manage their team and
I
how?
mean, yeah, we're not what I hope happens is just like by virtue of their own growth, right? They're kind of it's their they have the fishing pole, like they have the fishing pole, and so their own growth is an own. And we do talk a lot about being authentic with your team, and like I love, one of the things we love to do is to like when you're at the seed stage is to have your team like join the board meeting, for and to hear firsthand kind of the conversations we have that are both challenging and exciting, but the kind of how we approach difficult situations because it really starts with the CEO. It's like, I'm going to go political for 1 second. Somebody questioned me on why I was selling my Tesla. Like, why are you selling your Tesla? You like the car. And I sold it and I bought I can't believe I bought a Mustang Mach E GT. So I went in that direction. And I said, because like,
No, wait, did you buy it like, are Mustangs hybrid at all? Like,
no, well, I
okay.
got an EV. It's an EV.
Oh, you
It's
got
a
a
full EV.
Mustangs have EVs? Okay, all
Yeah.
right. I'm not gonna troll you so hard.
But here's why it's not that like it really because what I just said is true. The culture of a company starts at the top, right? So Elon is the CEO of Tesla. If I don't agree with how he moves through the world, if I don't agree with the way he operates in the world, then I'm gonna have a hard time believing in the culture he's creating because he is at the top of Tesla. He's creating a culture that
Yeah.
is really embodied by him, right? And so I don't want to buy products from that culture. And so I don't always have this kind of knowledge. Like I don't know the CEOs of most companies whose products I buy. But in this case, I'm kind of seeing it play out on stage, the world stage. And so I have the right as a consumer to buy from whoever I want. And I want to buy from a company who is closer to the culture, not the political. Like I'm fine in buying products from a Republic. I voted, so I have voted Republican before. I voted for George Bush Sr., right? Um, I haven't voted Republican in a while, but I don't have a problem with Republicans. Like I don't. I have a problem with the person. So the person that is Elon, from what I see, I can't support, and I don't want to be part of that culture. So,
I have a,
never voted.
I have a lot to
Okay,
say.
for the younger voters, if you had seen who George Bush Sr.'s Democratic opponent was, Michael Dukakis, and you had watched him do his thing, you might have changed your mind because it was really tough. Like it was supporting him would have been like it would have been. I think it would have been really bad for the country. And George Bush Sr. was a fine, he was a fine president. That's another conversation.
Um, I
Sorry,
have
I
a lot
took
to
you
say.
off your path.
No, you don't take me out of it. So the problem is like we only have 4 minutes,
Yeah.
and
Okay, back to questions.
I want to talk about this.
Hmm,
So maybe you and I are going to grab coffee
you
and
got it.
have this conversation without the recording on,
Right.
which is also how I am told I'm supposed to have these conversations in 2025.
By the way,
Um,
people can change. If Elon was like, you know what? I've now been in both worlds, and here are my new beliefs that are a hybrid of Democrat and Republican. There's a world where I would change. People can change. And so it's not like I, I kind of move away from someone forever, but I think given where he is right now, that's where I am.
Very problematic. Very problematic. Okay, let me pick one or two more questions from what I have received, and then some of you have put it in the chat. A little bit more tactical questions. So one is like, given the macro environment, do you feel like Europe and Asia are more friendly to climate startups than the US? And like, are you kind of paying attention more globally versus US based these days?
Yes, we do.
You
Sure.
shared. Very
We
fair.
um we do invest in the EU. It's harder for us because we're not based there, but we do
Yeah.
have some investments that are in the EU. We really focus on North America and the EU mostly for because of the geography, the time zone, and better cultural fit. I think we maybe that changes with fund two. We might look at South America and Central America more. But it's just like as a seed stage investor, we're so hands-on in ways that founders want that it's much harder to be hands-on when the time zones are too different. And so we've really it's and there's more in person visits if it's in the US or Canada.
And a similar question, but about space rather than geography. So do you look at companies kind of at the intersection of climate and health? Like, have you
And
seen,
health.
yeah, or is that just sort of like very outside of what you normally see?
I certainly would. I haven't seen any
Yeah, disappointing.
that are directly at the intersection.
Yeah.
Anything we do to reduce emissions improves health, right? So I guess you could say that copper, who is that's one of our recent investments. Copper is a simply like an appliance, an induction range with a battery, and so we're getting gas stoves out of apartments, and that has a proven health benefit to replace gas ranges with induction stoves. But I don't think we've done something more explicit than that. We would.
Um, Great segue into this next question, which is, are you only focusing on smart software? Because a lot of like decarbonization is hardware. So are you doing hardware? I mean, it sounds like you are.
We're bleeding in hardware. We have a sweet spot, then we have other spots that we invest in that we need to spend more time on. So like if we've invested in quite a few hardware companies, most of them have some software that's a part of it, but it just takes us a little longer. We dig a little deeper when it's hardware. We have to learn a little more.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Final question because we're out of time.
Yes.
Um, how can founders get in touch with you?
Um, let's see, the easiest way is you can do two things. Either email Josh at climactic.vc. I get a lot of email, but if that doesn't work, Haley, Haley
Oh,
at
sorry,
climactic.vc.
Haley.
Yeah. She sees all my email anyway, but she's an amazing chief of staff. That's the best direct way. I mean, obviously, I love when folks are connected to me on LinkedIn. I do most of my writing on LinkedIn, uh, and I do like engaging with people there.
All right, so we're going to point everybody over to your LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Josh. This was super, super fun and
Thanks, Leslie.
really great feedback in the chat room. Everyone, thank you for spending this hour with us. The only non-renewable resource that you have is your time, and we never take it for granted when you spend it with us. So thank you. I hope you had fun. A couple of upcoming events. We have New York Founder Day, which is like half workshop, half group therapy is on Monday, and we are keeping applications open until I think tomorrow, if that's right, Brian. Yeah, tomorrow. Um, and so kind of head over to our website in our blog. You can find the application to that. And then our next virtual fireside chat is going to be with Eric Newcomer, a journalist, and like very excited to kind of turn the tables and talk about what he is seeing. And so join us then. That one is June 10th, and we will have sign up links in our newsletter. Thank you, everybody, so much for your time. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Haley. Thank you, Ryan. And we'll see you next time.
Great questions, Leslie. Thanks so much for
Thank
having me.
you. Bye,
Take
everyone.